Hey Miguel, I see you in the hearing room. Can you hear me? I don't know if I see you at a microphone, but I can't hear anything. Just, can you say something again? It might have been my headphones.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, I can hear.
I had him off on purpose.
Got it. Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Good morning. This is Pat O'Connell calling to order the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission special open meeting on Thursday, March 28th at 10 a.m. Can we do a mic check for Commissioners Aguilera and Ellison?
This is Commissioner Aguilera. Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Hi, Jim Ellison here.
Great. Thank you both. I guess we'll formally call the roll now that we already know you're here.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Here.
Commissioner Aguilera?
Here.
Commissioner Ellison?
Present.
All commissioners are in attendance, Mr. Chair, and you have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, so next we'll rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico as the symbol of perfect friendship in the United Cultures. Okay, commissioners, we've got a relatively short agenda in front of us. Did you have any changes you'd like to see made to the agenda before we proceed?
No, thank you.
I don't have any either. Thank you.
Okay, so I move that we proceed with the agenda that was posted on Monday morning.
I second.
Seeing no disagreement, let's proceed. Next up is a public comment. Mr. Rodriguez, do we have anybody registered for public comment?
Mr. Chair, we do not have anyone registered online.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in the room here to give public comment? Okay, thank you. Next, announcements. Again, this is a special open meeting that we're having to respect jurisdictional deadline for a couple cases here. Meanwhile, we're going to have a hearing that begins April 1st in the New Mexico Gas Company rate case. So if you're interested in that case, please go to our website to get instructions on how you can watch the hearing as it unfolds and submit public comment during the hearing. And then we will have a regular open meeting a week from today, April 4th. I think we'll be back on the bi-weekly schedule with that meeting, but we'll see. Did you have any announcements, Mr. Cameron?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Okay, so let's proceed to the regular action items. First up is our raison d'etre, which is El Paso Electric Company's application for approval of its transportation electrification plan. We have a presentation from OGC. You have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So this matter concerns EP's application for its 2024 to 2026 Transportation Electrification Plan. The application requests approval for several programs, related rates, and cost recovery, and represents a significant expansion from EP's previous plan. The hearing examiner issued his recommended decision, which approved EP's TP in large part. What is before the Commission today is a proposed final order adopting the recommended decision with modifications as the order of the Commission. Although the proposed final order would modify the recommended decision, the effect of the order would be to approve EP's TP as it's described in the recommended decision. As I'm sure the Commission is aware, TP applications contain an extensive list of proposed programs and rates, so I'm not going to discuss each. Instead, I'm going to summarize how the final order adopts and modifies the recommended decision. Okay. So on to the final order. As I mentioned, top line summary is that the proposed final order would approve EP's TP as described in the recommended decision, but there are two issues that the final order modifies to some degree. The first issue relates to EP's proposed modification to the language of several tariffs. In short, there are several rates where the minimum monthly charge provision and the electric vehicle rate rider incentive credit provisions create ambiguity as to whether EP customer bills have a minimum monthly charge. EP has proposed clarifying language to those rates. The recommended decision resolved this dispute by concluding that EP's proposed language was consistent with the existing tariffs and therefore that EP should be allowed to revise those tariffs. The proposed final order reaches that same conclusion, that the additional language should be allowed with a somewhat modified analysis. So the first distinction is that the final order does not adopt the recommended decision's use of contract principles to interpret EP's prior tariffs. It instead applies principles used to interpret statutes and administrative rules. The reasoning for that is simple. The New Mexico Supreme Court has clearly established that commission-approved tariffs are not a contract, they are law. hence the interpretive principles applied there. The second distinction is that the final order adopts as an alternate argument that EP's proposed tariff language independently satisfies the requirements of the TEP statute and rule and is otherwise just and reasonable. So those are the two distinctions on that proposed language issue. The second issue relates to the EV purchase rebate program. The recommended decision approved the rebate program. Both staff and EP requested some clarifications in their exceptions regarding the program's scope and costs, and the proposed final order provides those clarifications. So with that, I recommend that the commission adopt the proposed final order, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, do you have any discussion, questions on the recommended final order?
And sorry, Mr. Chair, just to also flag that Commissioner Ellison has a proposed alternate order.
Great. Well, then Commissioner Ellison, would you like to go first then?
Sure. I'd be happy to. I'd like to ask one clarifying question of Mr. Martinez. Does I'll call it order number one contain clarification as to the costs, the additional administrative costs that would come with this new on the hood EV rebate program?
So the authorized costs in the proposed final order are equivalent to the unit cost times the rebate price. So I think 50 times 4,000 for a total of 200,000. Those are the approved costs in the final order.
But no additional administrative cost for that program are envisioned, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I have proposed an alternative order, which I'll call order number 2, which essentially adopts everything in the first order, but excludes the EV on the hood rebate program. So we're talking about $4,000 per vehicle for up to 50 EVs for a total program cost of $200,000. This is not a huge cost, obviously, for when you put it in context of the overall roughly $11 million program. However, it is my view that the focus really of these transportation electrification programs should be on the infrastructure itself, that is what is most logical for an electrical utility to contribute towards transportation electrification. And I really see these on the hood rebates as being outside of the scope of that core mandate. I think it is important to note that the utility EPE did not propose this program, that it clearly would entail additional administrative costs. However, those costs have not been included in this proposal. So if we approve the version number 1 of this order, we will be imposing a program without allowing for additional administrative costs for that program. I also think it's important to note that the income tax bracket adjustment bill was signed into law earlier this month, which allows for $3,000 state tax credit for new EV purchases. And obviously we've got the up to $7,500 federal tax credit. You know, I just don't see the need to add this program on top of the federal and state programs. So, you know, those are the reasons why I would advocate leaving it out.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ellison, and I believe that what you just said is consistent with what we talked about in the debate on the PNM program recently. So I admire your consistency and thank you for bringing that issue up again here. I'll just tell you where I'm at on that is I just don't want to be in a position arguing with myself on the PNM plan. What I got to was the realization that we have to have the vehicles to get the grid benefits. And then on your point about admin costs, I'm not managing that program, and EPE is, and they're among the people that agreed to the program and didn't object to it in the exceptions to the final order. So I'm trusting that EPE feels that that's okay. So from that point of view, I'm in the mode of adopting or being a proponent of the recommended decision that accepts, or the final order that accepts the RD as a whole.
And just one point of clarification, Mr. Chair. EP noted that it was not an EP proposed program, but did not accept, as you said, to the recommended decision, which approved the program.
Yeah. Commissioner Aguilera, do you have anything you'd like to propose, questions, discussions?
Yes, apologize if you could hear some background noise behind me. So I understand Commissioner Ellison's points. I think he makes some good ones. I think ultimately the proposal is in line with the Transportation Electrification Act that explicitly discusses incentives such as this one for low-income customers. I agree with the chairman in the statement that the goal here is to promote the use of electric vehicles and having the infrastructure in place. And it's a good point that if the infrastructure, I'm sorry, if the vehicles are not there to use the infrastructure, it kind of hurts that. And so I do fully believe that the program is consistent with the law. You know, I understand that El Paso Electric does not oppose. They didn't propose the program, but they don't oppose it. And I don't think that I believe that if they were concerned about additional administrative costs, they could have noted that in their exceptions. However, they did not. So this is in no way intended to establish a program that would result in confiscatory rates or anything like that. So I do think that the law supports approval of this program. Thank you.
And commissioners, just one other clarifying point on administrative costs. So the recommended decision approved over $1 million in administrative costs, which is close to 10% of the planned budget. So just to clarify that there are approved administrative costs in this program, just not marginal costs, marginal administrative costs for the EV rebate program.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so do we have any other issues or topics we want to explore further, debate on this? I mean, I know the last one, we went issue by issue. This one, it looks like there's one issue, so maybe it's order versus order. Just want to see how Commissioner Ellison and Aguilera, you'd like to structure the debate going forward and framing up a motion to proceed.
Well, in looking at the first proposed order, I don't have anything additional to suggest in terms of changes to that order or to the recommended decision. I would be, I think, in terms of efficiency, one thing we could do is vote on the two orders, or at least one of them. But I will yield to see if Commissioner Ellison has a different proposal.
No, well, it does seem that that is the main point of contention here. You know, in general, certainly the administrative costs as a percentage of the overall program seem reasonable, and you know, the program itself seems to be well scoped. Apart from my my concern and opposition to the on the hood rebates, you know, I believe that EP requested clarification, including around the administrative costs, and I'm just not sure that we would be providing that if the order number one is adopted. You know, I also will say that you know, we don't yet really have, I mean, we have a transportation electrification rule, but it doesn't really clarify the commission's priorities, and EPE did not propose this on the hood rebate program. And, you know, I'm not, you know, I don't like pushing this agenda on EPE, given that we don't have a rule that really clarifies what we want to see in these programs. So I guess in answer to the chair's question, you know, I'm fine with voting on one version or the other, unless there's some other way you'd like to structure the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and again, your points are well made, and I appreciate your consistency from plan to plan here. Having said that, I'll move for approval of the final order that adopts the recommended decision.
I will second that, and would like to have some discussion. So Mr. Martinez, can you clarify? I think I just want to make sure that this discussion is clear on the costs, that because we've been talking about administrative costs, but the cost for the rebate program, for the rebates themselves, I understood El Paso Electric's exceptions as wanting to ensure that they would be able to recover those costs. And the order does approve the recovery of those additional costs. And so that's the first clarification. And the other part that we've been talking about is administrative costs, which EPE will be able to recover in general. However, the order does not approve, and it was not requested by EP to add additional administrative costs on top of what was already being proposed, or what the RD ended up approving.
Commissioner, that's how I understand EP's exceptions, and I have those up, and I'll just read them in full, so I'm not paraphrasing. So starting with the second paragraph in their exception on this point, the RD points out that the proposal for direct customer rebates for EV purchases originated with interveners and identifies EP's opposition to the proposal. Nevertheless, if the commission adopts the RD's recommendation to add an on-the-hood rebate program to EP's TP, EP supports staff's request for clarifications on the bounds of the EV rebate program and approved costs in the final order. And here we're coming to the specific request for clarification point. So, quote, specifically, EP requests that the commission confirm in the final order that there are 50 rebates of $4,000 each available to low-income customers, and that, two, the rebates can be applied towards the purchase of new or used electric vehicles. Finally, EP requests that the commission increase the total approved TEP costs to include the additional costs of the EV rebate program. So I read that to be requesting clarification on the number and amount of the rebate program, whether they can be applied to the purchase of new or used electric vehicles, and whether the costs just discussed are recoverable. I don't see that as a specific request for clarification on administrative costs.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I do not have anything further to discuss on this motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any more questions, debate before we vote? None, I'll call for Mr. Cameron to call the roll.
Commissioner O'Connell?
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilera?
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison?
Abstain.
Was that abstain?
Abstain, yes.
Okay. So the motion to approve what we've been talking about as order one passes 2 in favor and 1 abstention, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so next up, we have 2 procedural matters regarding IRPs. I thought it was appropriate to have them on regular agenda just because this is first time through with the new rule on the IRP, and just want to make sure the public understands what we're doing. So appreciate we've got Mr. Martinez next up for P&M IRP, and then similar item to follow Ms. Lang with the SPS IRP. So take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So commissioners, this is a straightforward item, and I'll keep my presentation very brief. In short, the IRP rule contemplates that a commission designee will perform certain functions on behalf of the commission, including coordinating the facilitator for the facilitated stakeholder process and the independent monitor for the RFP process. The purpose of this notice is to provide record notice that Mr. Arthur O'Donnell, the commission's director of policy administration, is serving as the commission's designee in this docket. Doesn't do any more than that, doesn't do any less than that. It's purely providing record notice that Mr. O'Donnell is performing this function. I recommend the commission adopt the notice, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have a question about that. Given that we have not yet accepted the the PNM Integrated Resource Plan, would it be premature to designate a staff member to serve in that role?
No, it would not be premature, as Mr. O'Donnell has been serving this role, including during the coordination of the facilitated stakeholder process. So this is purely providing notice that Mr. O'Donnell has been serving this role and will continue to serve this role in this, and there will be similar notices in other dockets. This is purely an informational notice.
Okay, so the focus here is not just on the request for proposals for new generation. It's dealing with the entire IRP process.
Correct. So the commission designee performs certain functions under the IRP rule. Dealing with the independent monitor for the RFP process is one of them, but it is not the only function performed by the commission designee.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions or discussion?
I do not have any questions or discussion on this.
Thank you. And I will move to approve the notice of commission designee.
I second.
Mr. Cameron?
Commissioner Ellison,
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
The motion to approve of the notice passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And again, this is first time through with this rule. I would anticipate for future IRPs, this is the kind of thing that might even be single signature order, but thought it was worth it just to make sure people knew what we were doing on this iteration. So next up, we've got two orders. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Two orders related to the SPS IRP, and then just spoiler alert, Commissioner Ellison, I think this gets more towards what you were talking about with where we're at in the SPS process is different than where we're at with the PNM process.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We have docket number 23-0073 UT. This is also to provide notice for the appointment of the commission's designee in the matter of SPS Southwestern Public Service Company's IRP application on February 23rd, the commission accepted SPS's IRP plan. And this assignment of Mr. Arthur O'Donnell comes at the heels of that acceptance. This assignment was done pursuant to NMSA 1978-62-19-9. And the commission has jurisdiction over this for this statute. And that is the extent of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Again, similar to what we just did with PNM on this order, are there any questions? Seeing none, I will move to accept the order noticing commission designee for the SPS IRP.
I second.
Mr. Cameron?
Commissioner Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
The motion to approve of the notice of the commission designee in this docket passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great. Okay, so then
Thank you.
you have another order, right?
We do. We have a In the same docket number, we have an order that appointed the independent monitor in this matter. Commission has jurisdiction over this matter pursuant to section 62-1710 of the New Mexico statutes. Just a brief I will just briefly state that during this meeting, we have the commissioners, commission's designee Arthur O'Donnell. Mr. O'Donnell, would you like to present? To present to the commission how the independent monitor was chosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Arthur O'Donnell. In anticipation of the filings for the two IRP documents, the commission, through me, working with Meckley, the advisor to the chair, and Meredith Tidwell, who is the DOE Clean Energy Fellow for 24-25, issued a market solicitation, is essentially a request for proposals and interest in performing the independent monitor services for either or both SPS and PNM. We sent out this notice to about 24 entities that perform these kind of consulting services. We received legitimate proposals from a half a dozen that kind of, of course, ranged in their pricing proposals and the services that they have done in the past for other utilities and other jurisdictions. And we scored them and really kind of identified 3 companies that would do the work for the SPS IRP. The SPS, as you've heard in the several presentations so far, is going to be a very large market solicitation, and coming at a time when many other utilities are seeking the same kind of resources, renewable energy storage to go along with firm capacity. And so instead of us choosing the one, we forwarded 3 of the proposals to SPS. One, to find out if they had any conflicts, right, had worked with these entities in the past. And SPS chose the Axion Group as its kind of preferred candidate for this. And so I think this order actually identifies the Axion Group as the independent monitor for SPS. And I'm not quite sure what other information you need. I have the documentation for all of the proposals and how we scored them and all that. For the independent monitor, we just kind of have them in a folder in ASD. So I'm looking for a home for that information.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions for Ms. Lang or Mr. O'Donnell on this potential order appointing independent monitor?
No, thank you.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Thank you both. I've been trying to make sure I pause and give time for you to respond. So hearing no more questions, I will move to adopt this order appointing independent monitor in SPS's IRP.
Seconded.
Commissioner Ellison,
Aye.
Commissioner Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Connell.
Aye.
The motion to adopt the order appointing the independent monitor passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so last formal item on the agenda, I put it there just because I would like a little bit of direction from my colleagues here, and I recognize that you're on spring break with your family, so hopefully we can handle this quickly. We've talked about this in previous meetings, that we're going to ask the IOUs to come in and do a presentation on their readiness in advance of the summer peak heating season. My problem is been struggling with how we want to proceed with that. You were given a resolution. Another option is to open a docket. I think the argument in favor of opening a docket is then that creates a better, easier to find place for information that we receive to be placed in the e-docket system. Then why I was wondering about opening a docket is that I can see these presentations as being something we're going to want to do in advance of a summer season. We might want to have a kind of a post-mortem after the summer heating season with a look forward to the winter heating season. So it'll be, twice a year type thing. We have a similar thing going on with the gas company. It's easier to tie that to a docket because of their annual supply plan requirements. So anyway, apologies for my indecision. That's why that's on the agenda. So just didn't know if you have any guidance. It sounds like, having worked through it, a good idea that let's just use as foundation for discussion is that we just go ahead and issue an order opening a docket. And then for the utilities they're watching, we're thinking about having this on April 19th. That's the Friday after open meeting on the 18th. I think we've got convergence on what information we would like to see in those presentations. So whether you get a resolution or a order opening the docket, it will have the date, the time, and the list of things we would like the utilities to present. So, okay, so that's my big speech on this. Just commissioners, do you have firm feelings on this or any guidance you can give me on how we should proceed?
I was just going to say, I think opening a docket is certainly fine. I think that it will help and keep the information in the record. I would suggest also including in the order, and I apologize if I missed this in the draft order, directing the utilities to file their presentations in the record as well. And I would also suggest including a statement that after the information is submitted, the docket will automatically close unless the commission leaves it open, decides to leave it open or reopens it. I think that way we don't have to issue another order after closing the docket. Unless we want to leave this as a docket that will continue to have additional information submitted into it, then we can leave it open.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm sitting here thinking, duh, why didn't I think of that? So, yeah, it sounds like just best vehicle to receive the information, make it available to the public is open docket, and then we'll just have it close automatically after information's been received. So anyway, that's not what you have in front of you in the binder. But I think MacLee's been through a few iterations on this. We should be able to put together a single signature order using those concepts. I'll make sure MacLee shares it with Cynthia and Judy, just so everybody knows. And then I think I'm signature guy on Monday. So yeah, without hearing any objection from either of you, that's my plan for how to proceed. So if you do object to that, let's talk about it now.
I guess I don't have strong feelings about this one. I would note that, we are getting some resource adequacy related filings from PNM in sort of an obscure docket that, you have to know what it is to search for it, which I think is unfortunate. So, I mean, if there's a way to have a docket that maybe would consolidate the annual resource adequacy filings and updates from at least the 3 electric utilities, that that may be something worthwhile to consider.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I guess why hasn't somebody issued a petition to do what you just said, I guess is where I'm sitting here thinking. Because that's a pretty good suggestion.
I don't know. I think, the utilities are making the filings in the dockets that they were required to, and, things are just sort of on autopilot. So I guess we have to take some action if we want to improve it.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And again, spoiler alert, when you see draft agenda for the meeting on the 4th, it is heavy with orders closing the docket. So I think your suggestion here falls kind of into that lane. How do we clean things up going forward? So I guess I'll ask Mr. Cameron if you could think about that and have a suggestion for how we could try to clean these things up so that information lands in a place where it's expected, I guess, would be what I heard Commissioner Ellison saying.
Mr. Chair, we just kind of off the top of my head, we could research those other dockets, and as part of this order, provide some direction on. I mean, I guess it depends on what else those other dockets are involving, but we could give some direction to the utilities on filing this specific type of information into this docket going forward rather than those. But I think that would speak to, and this is something I usually don't want to do, which is leaving this docket open instead of closing it, unless we want to just, we could reopen it every year or do a new docket every year. My other suggestion on that is if we want to do this for not just for the summer, but also for when winter starts rolling around, maybe we want it to, with the language, and I think the language that's in the discussion item on the agenda is different from, I'm looking at one of the orders that's on board effect, keeping it to seasonal peak readiness instead of summer. And then it, kind of covers everything.
Great. So I guess, we can think about that offline after this meeting and come up with a good plan on that. But at a minimum, expect a single signature order for this docket for this summer. Okay, so next item is communications with commissioners. Commissioners, do you have anything you'd like to bring up at this meeting?
I guess I'll go ahead and jump in, Mr. Chair. I did have just a couple of items that I wanted to bring up. First is that, I continue to be in touch with the folks at Berkeley Lab on the upcoming workshop that we're planning, the cost benefit analysis workshop, which would be part of the grid modernization integrated distribution planning rulemaking series. I don't yet have a confirmation of the date that the dates the speaker would be available. Tentatively, in looking at our calendars, I was wondering about May 8 or 9, but again, that's sort of a tentative just to check with your schedules because I don't yet have the speaker schedule. So that's one item. The second item is that I would like to suggest that we consider asking P&M to do a presentation on their integrated resource plan, much in the same way as we had SPS do a presentation on their integrated resource plan. I thought it was very useful what SPS did, and I appreciated the ability to ask them some questions about the process and about their IRP document. I know our rule does not expressly allow for that presentation, but neither does it rule out such a presentation. It's completely silent. So in my view, it's very helpful to have that interaction between the company and the commission prior to a vote on acceptance. And I would propose that we have it again. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. P&M's IRP presentation is interesting just from a scheduling point of view. I mean, bringing that up now versus when we have to rule on acceptance might make it a challenge. And then I guess I'd like a little more information on why you think that's important. I mean, for me, the report speaks for itself, and I think my decision on acceptance or not should be tied to the report. So I kind of had the opposite takeaway from the SPS presentation. There wasn't anything in there that gave me a better understanding of that report.
Okay, well, I certainly agree that our ultimate decision here on acceptance needs to be tied to the report. I guess in contrast to the SPS case, we had some significant staff concerns here, and those were never addressed by P&M. Staff made their filing, their report on the IRP, and the process, unfortunately, did not call for a response by P&M, and no response was given. So I would see having a presentation by P&M would also be a chance for staff and any other interested stakeholder to make comments before the commission. I would like to acknowledge staff's work on the P&M IRP process, which was significant. And my concern is that if we don't have a presentation, that we won't really be fully taking those concerns into account.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I guess my takeaway is there's two issues there. One is just information is good. And again, the report, the presentations we received in the past didn't do anything beyond my ability to read the report. The other is I agree with you, staff's filing that shows that they really dug in, and I think they raised some substantive issues, but I don't yet see how staff's contribution is on point in terms of what our job is to accept or not accept an IRP based on the rule. And then having said that, we have this rule that was designed in a way that gives the commission very little opportunity for input on the IRP. And then second of all, acceptance isn't what it was in the past in terms of what it means for a utility in the IRP. And we had that conversation around the SPS IRP that it's really kind of a check-in on the process at this point. It isn't a moment that shapes the future. And frankly, that's my biggest criticism of staff's report is their comments aren't really tied to remedies that are constructive, I think, in terms of the future. So that's what's filtering through my mind is what do we have a presentation on IRP, because that's the issue here, or do we need other processes in addition to IRP to address staff's comments? And I think just trying to shoehorn a presentation on IRP when I can read the report doesn't feel like that valuable a use of time. But I could be convinced just saying that that's what my position is right now.
I'll add a little bit to provide my thoughts. I also would prefer to read the report. I think so. As opposed to having a presentation, the IRP process is definitely unique. I think it is not like another process that I've ever worked on. It's iterative with different steps. It is giving the utilities deference because ultimately I think I sort of see it as putting the utility and stakeholders in a position to work together to come up with a proposal. Ultimately, that proposal will be the utility's proposal, but the IRP process helps the utility and stakeholders talk to each other so the utility can consider their input. And I do think that eventually we will be ruling on the decisions that come out of this process. I think, and so I don't necessarily see the need for a presentation outside of the process as it is outlined in the IRP rule. I think that if there are specific questions that we might have for the utility, we can ask them through a bench request order that they could respond to. And so that might be an avenue that might help, because I certainly appreciate the ability to see what's going on with the process and follow it. And I think that if any one of us has questions that might sort of help or guide without, really getting in the way, I think that we could issue a bench request.
Right. Well, I guess, let me add a little bit about why I felt the SPS presentation was helpful. There were, after reading the IRP document, I had numerous questions about it, such as, what really was the action plan when, I expected to see a concrete list of resources that would be acquired within the next few years, And, instead, you had this table of, different scenarios and of, technologies used and different load growth scenarios. And, it was all very unclear about, what exactly they were going to go out and acquire with the RFP. And I had several questions of that nature, and to me, it was helpful to be able to interact with the utility uh, and ask those questions. And it could be that we would have a similar situation here where it would be useful to interact with the utility and ask questions. I certainly do agree that issuing a bench request is another way to do that. I also agree that if all the utility is going to do is tell us what's in the report, that's not very useful. For example, I unfortunately didn't find the gas company presentation to be that useful because they summarized what's in the stipulation. So, to the extent you get some interaction and the ability to ask questions that clarify issues in the report, I think that a presentation could be useful.
And I guess just to summarize, the point I was trying to make is if you read the rule, clearly IRP process isn't our process. It doesn't give us opportunity to have meaningful input along the way. And again, I could be convinced otherwise, but when I read the rule and I look at how the IRP rolled out and how we were not allowed to be part of the stakeholder interaction prior to now, look at what the standards for acceptance are. It's, as Commissioner Aguilera said, opportunity for the utility to develop a plan with the stakeholders who are going to be affected by that plan. And so if the utility fails to take advantage of that opportunity, and I think there's some searing examples of that in staff's comments, there will be consequences a utility probably doesn't like in other dockets, not necessarily within IRP. So anyway, that's why this conversation today has been helpful. We're going to have to deal with statutory deadline on acceptance of the IRP. And so anyway, I'll take to heart what I heard today and come up with a proposal for agenda going forward. And whether that includes a presentation or not, I think is a open question, because like I say, if the utility failed to do a good job on their IRP, why give them another bite at the apple by letting them have a presentation is another way to think about that.
And I do take your point about the timeline that we've got here. Certainly, I understand that our deadline is April 16th to accept or to not accept the IRP, and that in order to make it work with our bi-weekly schedule, we'd either need to issue a variance from our own rule, extending the deadline until a few days until the next open meeting, or we would have the presentation on April 4th and then have a special open meeting the following week to vote on the IRP, or we'd have a presentation on the 4th and then vote on the 4th is another option. But, I'm bringing this up as an idea I support, but, I understand that, that there are other views on this, and that, maybe a bench request is an alternative way to go.
Yeah, thanks. And I just have one question on what you just said is, do you think it's appropriate for the commission to waive its own deadline? I mean, what happened in the SPS IRP is SPS asked for more time and they waived their deadline that works for them in the rule. And again, just looking at it from the point of view, it's not the commission's process. PNM filed an IRP, they got feedback on that IRP, and we have 30 days to accept or reject. So if PNM wants to change the trajectory on that process, it feels like the petition would be more appropriate coming from them than from us.
Well, I guess my thoughts on that are that when the IRP rule was adopted, the commission had a weekly meeting schedule, and are going to a bi-weekly schedule. Throws another wrinkle into this, and I don't see, if we were to give ourselves a couple more days so that it would line up with our regular open meeting schedule, I don't see that as being a big problem.
Yeah, my point isn't about the frequency of the meeting. It's who has the interest in the decision that's going to be made here. I mean, we could be on a weekly schedule, and the point would be the same as if it's a weekly schedule. This is PNM's IRP, so why? And they choose when to make their filings. They can look at a calendar just as well as anybody else can. Why should we be superintending dates for them?
Well, I think that the rule was made with the weekly schedule in mind, and that if we wanted to have a presentation on the 4th and then make an ultimate decision, when would it be on the 18th? It's just a couple days later. I really don't see an issue with that.
I'm asking a bigger question than the dates right now for PNM's IRP. The commission has its rules, the deadlines and the process are set in the rules. If we start playing with dates just for our own convenience or because we assume it would help somebody else out, where does that lead? So it isn't about weekly meeting versus bi-weekly versus monthly. It's that this is PNM's IRP. So why should we be entertaining changing their dates for them when they haven't asked for a change in dates?
I understand that point of view. I guess I just don't see it as being such an existential issue. I see it, if we were wanting to delay things by half a year, then, I would see that as a problem. If we just need a couple days, I don't see it as a problem.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Aguilera, any more on this? Or any other communications you want to make?
Yeah, I just want to respond to a couple of, oh, thank you. Respond to a couple of the questions about dates that were raised. First, with respect to the dates for the summer readiness, I saw a date of April 19 proposed. That works for me. And then Commissioner Ellison raised a couple of dates for the workshop. I think he said May 8 and 9. Either date, I believe, works for me. And in fact, I wanted to think about one of those dates as well for the regional markets workshop. So if there's no objection, maybe we could have consecutive days of workshops and we can just figure out which is which. That's all that I had.
Okay. So I guess just to round out the conversation on dates, that week of May 8th or 9th is when I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be traveling to Nebraska for a high school graduation. So I know I won't be in the office. What I don't know is when I'm going to be available, because the events that I'm going to attend haven't been scheduled yet. So having said that, if those are the only dates that work, the commission should proceed. I can use YouTube and read the materials that get presented to get myself informed on that, but certainly can have a quorum on the 8th or 9th. I can't promise I'll be there. And then I didn't have any other items for communications with commissioners. So is there anything else that we'd like to bring up?
No, thank you.
No, thank you. So for me, those are not the only days that would work. So I think we could, at least for the regional markets, we could look at other dates. Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
that the last half of April and May is going to be tough, but so that's why I'm saying if those are the dates that work, proceed without me.
Okay, and I just received a message from Cynthia noting that May 17th is also a potential date for the regional markets workshop, and that there's actually a hold on our calendars for it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so going twice, any objections to adjournment?
No objections.
Then look forward to seeing you next week, commissioners, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.